Welcome, everyone. I'm Staff Sergeant Ryan Brewer. This is Staff Sergeant Kevin Paul, and we are the creators of MilitaryTrumpetJobs.com. Today, we are talking about the U.S. Air Force Band Ceremonial Brass stationed at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling in Washington, D.C. We are joined by Master Sergeant Adrian Holton. So glad you're with us today. Adrian, what's been going on with you lately?
Well, as you know, first of all, thanks for having me. But as you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so definitely things are a little different right now. But yeah, just trying to keep busy, doing lots of virtual recording at home, and the ceremonial missions are still happening with the Air Force Band, so I'm still keeping busy for sure.
Nice. Well, before we get into job specifics, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. So I did my degrees at University of Florida and Indiana University, and then about a year after finishing my master's degree, I won a job with the United States Air Force Academy Band in Colorado Springs. I was stationed there for about 5 years as a regional bandsman, and then about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I a little bit more than 3 years ago, I won the job here in Washington D.C. with the Air Force Band Ceremonial Brass, and I moved about 3 years ago. So I've been in the Air Force about 8 years, and I've loved every minute of it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's always interesting to hear how everyone gets started. I think it's important that we let people know that we all took very different paths to reach the same goal, which is to make a living playing the trumpet. And as always, starting pay information, including benefits and bonuses, are available on militarytrumpetjobs.com. So please head over there and check out that resource that we've built for you. Throw us a like, smash that subscribe button so that you're always in the know about these jobs. So let's dive right into the questions. First of all, what is ceremonial brass?
Yeah, so as the name suggests, we are the official ceremonial ensemble of the United States Air Force Band. We have 38 active duty airmen musicians made up of brass and percussion instrumentalists. We also have a bagpiper and two full time drum majors. Out of those 38 musicians, 11 of them are trumpet spots. So, the mission of the Air Force Band as a whole is to honor those who have served, inspire citizens to heighten patriotism and service, and positively connect with the global community on behalf of the United States Air Force and the United States of America. And so, of those three pillars, the ceremonial brass mission mostly focuses on the honors portion. We provide musical support for Air Force funerals at Arlington National Cemetery. We perform two types of funerals there: the military honors funeral, which is basically, as far as musical support, just a trumpet player rendering taps. And then military honors funeral with escort is, in addition to the bugler slash trumpeter, there's a 13 to 16 member band, which includes a drum major, performing hymns and marches at various moments during the transfer of the remains and the funeral service. So that's one part of the job. Another thing that we do is we support the state arrivals at the White House, full honors arrivals for foreign dignitaries at the Pentagon, or sometimes on the flight line at Joint Base Andrews. And we also perform patriotic programs, change of commands, retirements, award ceremonies, probably similar to what you all do in the Pershing Zone. Um, and those type of missions that we do outside the funerals, they range from kind of a large brass choir, sometimes to as small as just a brass quintet. So you do about 1,000 ceremonies a year, and that's total for the group, about 1,000 for the ceremonial brass. We do some other special performances too. We're on the Today Show every July 4th. We do, of course, presidential inaugurations every 4 years and state funerals. We recently performed on the flight line as President George H.W. Bush arrived for the last time and departed for the last time from Washington, D.C. on Air Force One, which was really special to be a part of.
That sounds all too similar. Besides some of the things that you've mentioned, what are some of your favorite moments on the job?
Yeah, so I think if you ask my family, they love seeing me on TV. So in our jobs, all of us, that's something that's part of our regular life. Whether it's July 4th, like I mentioned on the Today Show, or in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. Of course, the state funeral was internationally broadcast. I think probably, if you would have asked me as like a young student, whether I was in my undergraduate or master's degree, if I was in an Air Force band, what I'd look forward to the most is probably like ending on a high C or a high D on the end of some John Williams piece, performing for thousands of people. But, I think, and you probably can relate to this, the daily work of getting to honor our fallen heroes, while not the most musically rewarding, right? And sometimes we do it in some pretty tough conditions, whether that's, weather or just emotional conditions. It's I think it's the true honor of the job. I mean, that's something that I never would have thought would impact me so much, but it's a really important thing that we get to do. So that's certainly been a highlight and continues to be a highlight. I think when I was a regional bandsman, maybe one of the highlights. Actually, you can see it in the camera. I have these 9 photos here on the wall. It's of me performing at the seventh inning stretch at Colorado Rockies games where we used to play "God Bless America,"
Awesome.
standing behind home plate. So there's a lot of really special moments of this job, and they range from performing at professional sporting games, high profile concerts, where you get to end on that high C at the end of the at the end of the show, and then also again honoring our heroes. So it's just been a wonderful job, a wonderful time, and I look forward to at least the next 12 years of doing it.
Awesome. So, how would you describe like a typical work day? What does a typical work day look like?
I'm not sure there's a typical workday, because that would mean that like most of the days are similar. But I guess I can tell you a little bit about the job. It's a 5-day-a-week job, so usually that's Monday through Friday for us, which is certainly unlike most other professional musician jobs, right? Where you're working on the weekends. Even our colleagues that are in the concert bands for our respective groups, they probably do a lot more nights and weekends than at least than I do in the Air Force band ceremonial brass. Um, so typically, I'll spend my day making music of some kind, whether that's at a funeral or a promotion ceremony. If I'm doing a funeral, I'll do 2 to 3 funerals. So either work in the morning or the afternoon. When I'm not performing, playing those ceremonies or funerals I mentioned, I'm probably practicing, which is an important part to keep up your craft, especially as we're not necessarily super musically challenged performing the job in the cemetery. Again, super important job musically. It's important for us to keep up our chops outside of that because it's not going to give us that exercise, if you will. So I spend a lot of time practicing. I also work on my mission support duty. So everyone in the Air Force band is assigned at least one mission support duty. If you think of the Air Force band as a professional arts organization, we're basically the musicians are running all parts of that. We do have a handful or maybe a dozen people that are in slots where they're either no longer performing or that they were never in a performing role, doing some mission support work. But the vast majority of the work is done by us, the airmen musicians. And so, for example, I work in the audition shop. So I'm talking to you about this audition, and I'm running a rock band voice audition on Thursday. So I'll be in helping with that. Some other jobs in the unit include working in operations, the music library. Operations is like booking the jobs, the gigs that we're doing, the performances. Music library. We have a marketing team where they're monitoring our Facebook page and creating, interesting web content, a whole variety of jobs, same jobs you would find in a professional arts organization like an orchestra. And as I sort of alluded to, another thing that people may not realize is with us working basically daytime hours Monday through Friday, it gives a lot of time for other things. So one perk of me moving here is I have a young family, so being home nights and weekends was a really big perk. Other people take advantage of that in other ways, whether that's becoming involved with their church music scene or freelancing. There's just a lot of opportunity that I quite didn't expect because of the way that the unique aspect of the schedule. Um, it's definitely a lot of work, but it's kind of geared towards those daytime hours.
Great. Let's talk about the audition. So we know there's vacancies for the ceremonial brass. Can you give us a timeline when everything's happening?
Yeah, so the audition date is December 14th to 15th. Materials are due, so the pre screening materials, which are listed on the website, they're due on November 9th. And that's a tape submission. I believe there's 5 excerpts on there, in addition to a resume. So, within a week or a week and a half of that November 9th date, the audition committee will have listened to all the submissions and narrow it down to the members that they'd like to invite. So we'll send out invites to those members and usually give them about a week to basically RSVP to secure their spot at the audition. So the unique thing about this audition is because we're operating during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've taken some additional safety precautions. So it's not going to, if you've been to an Air Force band audition, it's going to look quite different than previous ones. Um, some things that are different is we're not going to have a mass warm-up room. So basically every candidate is going to get a private warm-up room. We're still working out the details of how this works, but at least 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour, just depending on, we have some figuring out to do. Luckily, there's a couple auditions before that, classical auditions. We have a clarinet, percussion audition, so we'll be able to kind of work out the details. But there also won't be separate rounds. Typically we have a preliminary round in the morning. All the candidates play. We advance some candidates to the semifinal round, which is usually after lunch in the afternoon, and then we'll advance even fewer candidates to the final round. This one's going to be different. We're actually going to hear all of the materials in one sitting. So it will be spaced out a little bit. I don't think the expectation will be to play through the entire list in, just straight through, which as a trumpet player, that just hurts thinking about it, especially some of the lists that I've seen recently. So it will kind of be sectioned out just a little bit, but once you enter the room, it's unlikely that you'll leave unless the committee needs to deliberate at some point in the middle of that. And the committee does reserve the right, if someone is just not meeting expectations and they can come to that conclusion in the audition room, they may excuse some candidates before they actually get to the end of the round. That's kind of some differences about this audition that you haven't seen in other Air Force band auditions.
It sounds like you're making it a safe environment during COVID for people to come in, which is
exactly, and that's the whole point, is just trying to, we went without auditions for quite a few. We haven't had an audition in many months because we were kind of just waiting to see as CDC guidance, as medical guidance changed, and finally we got to the point where we need to do it, and we think we've come up with a really safe way to do it, where the candidates won't be interacting with each other. Everyone will be socially distant in the actual audition room, including the committee. There will be, I mentioned that it's kind of one long round, but for those that kind of progress all the way through the list, there may still be an ensemble portion where they would sight read with a brass quintet. So that's an important thing to think about as you're kind of mentally planning through the audition and the things that you need to focus on. I'm just trying to think. There will be a screen, even though it's going to be kind of 3 segments in one like 50-60 minute session. There will be a screen up for the earlier sections of the list, if that makes sense. And if someone ends up advancing, you two know that it's really important in a military band audition to have some sort of like interview, or at least discussion with candidates, because unlike a orchestra where there's a 10-year process, it's much different in the military. It's a 4-year commitment that the candidates, that the enlistee would be making. So it's important that we have a good feel that the person's a team player, that they're going to work really well with our colleagues, and so that will still be there. There will be some informal interview, or at least interaction with the committee, if the candidate progresses to the later rounds.
Dang, that sounds very different. I feel like that would help me. I don't know. I always felt like I struggled with the multiple round over, a long day scenario. But yeah,
maybe like over warming up multiple
right.
times.
Well, that's been something I've had to work through. Yeah.
Yep, me too. Yeah.
so. Now it's time to answer some mailbag questions from our viewers. First off, what type of player are you looking for?
So, I guess we're just kind of looking for someone that's going to be really easy to work with. So, someone that has a beautiful, classically oriented sound, someone that plays with great pitch, great time, a strong emphasis on musicality. Another unique part about our job, because of our mission, basically everything we do is high profile. So, consistency is super, super important. Not saying you have to play a perfect audition and not have any cracked notes and take no risk. We don't want to hear a safe player. We just want to hear someone that has those qualities I mentioned, but that can also do that consistently. We typically don't rehearse a lot as an ensemble. Most of the stuff we do, if we do a rehearsal, it's like 10 minutes before the gig or before we need to be standing out wherever we are. We'll run through the national anthem of this foreign country. And so the expectation is that you can sight read really well, that you can just have something on your stand and not just play right notes and rhythms, but be able to come up with an intelligent interpretation of that can match with other people. So I think that that's a really important part of the process for people to consider, because a lot of times we look at this list and you may create this whole organizational set for your 6 or 8 weeks before the audition, and if sight reading's not on that, then you may get far in the audition, but it's unlikely you're gonna win.
We have had some people in our auditions and the field band auditions. So our audition being the Army band and the field band auditions that I've seen where people sound great and sight reading is just blown it for them.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's an unknown factor. And some of those anthems that we play, 'cause I know we do a similar job in the Army band. Some of those anthems are pretty tricky. So like Rossini overtures
Yeah.
would definitely throw someone off if they
Yeah, it surprises people to learn that the Star Spangled Banner is one of the easiest national anthems to play.
Yeah, and some of them, like, you're like, oh, this doesn't look so bad, and you play the whole page down, and there's a big DS at the top or a DC that goes all the way back to the, and you play the whole tune again, and you're just like,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's important to be able to kind of show more than just what's expected on the list, but be able to be a complete player.
Absolutely. Another one of the questions from our viewers is: are you accepting prior service, even from different branches like Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard?
Yeah, so we are, we don't have a lot of control over that process. So the short answer is no, we're not. The exception being active duty Air Force, we can audition, because for them we don't have to get them into the Air Force. That's just a permanent change of station. We call it PCS. They just move from one station to another, just like I did. And so the long story is that the big Air Force, so like outside of bands like the Air Force, allots a certain number of prior service allocations every year. So certain number that the Air Force lets in from other services. And in the past couple years, our career field, the band career field, has gotten 0 slots. I mean, we're talking like maybe 100 slots for the entire Air Force. And so because of that, we could potentially pick a really qualified candidate from another service, but we don't actually know if we can get them in, and we won't know. So for us, it's just not worth it to kind of lead someone on, because someone may have to separate from their service if their enlistment comes up, and then if we don't have a job, that would be really unfair. So at this time, we are not. I have seen in our mailbox there have been a lot of people inquiring about that. So do inquire about it, because if for some reason something changes a week before the tape deadline, where we find out that we have X number of slots in this class, we may open it up. We may reach out to those people. So please inquire. We'll say not at this time, move you over to another folder in our email, ready to respond if something changes.
I remember when I was in the Army Field Band, where I actually met you, Adrian.
Yeah.
We were taking that Air Force Band audition. I didn't know until a few weeks before. I got an email and a phone call, and I'm glad I was working on that list. Yeah, keep inquiring. I just want to say, because when that came up, I was able to take the audition, and that comes and goes, just like a few other things in big Army, big Air Force.
Right.
Another one of the questions from our viewers: to take the audition, do you need to have a green card, or can you be a visa holder, or do you need to be a citizen? I know there are certain clearances that you need since you work at the White House, the Pentagon. What status or tier do you need to have? Another question from one of our viewers is: do you need to be a citizen to take the Air Force Band audition?
Yeah, so outside of U.S. citizens, of course, U.S. citizens are welcome to audition. Someone needs to be have a permanent resident card, so which is basically a green card. But the best way to find out if you're eligible is to contact a local recruiter. That's actually part of our, once we invite our candidates, we'll suggest that they actually reach out to a recruiter, not because they should go enlist right now, but because they should make sure that there's not some disqualifying factors that they have. And some of those disqualifying factors could be citizenship. They might not have the right status to be in our country or to serve in the military. Other ones might be they might have some medical issue that prevents them from serving. Certainly we have like height and weight corresponding weight requirements. So there's a lot of reasons, but just contact, like going on the Air Force website or going in your community to the local Air Force recruiter and asking just a very specific question of, hi, I'm thinking about auditioning for a Air Force band. Am I eligible based on this? And they'll be able to answer for you. I do want to stress that you don't need to sign any paperwork to ask these questions, and you should not. You should just ask those questions just to see if you're eligible, because the eligibility to enlist as an airplane mechanic or any of the other jobs in the Air Force is the same as being a musician, except you also need to prove your musical skill and demonstrate that through a competitive audition.
We received a lot of questions about audio recordings, digital recordings for auditions. Now that the pre-screen process for pretty much all military bands is a digital recording or video, can you give some advice or some of what the pitfalls are?
Sure. We're not going to hire a candidate based on the recording quality, but certain recording devices can hinder your ability to communicate through that digital process to us. So, I'm not saying you need to go buy like the most expensive microphone or that, but you should be recording on something that captures your characteristic sound and your technique, and you don't want something that splits every time you articulate. So it's really important to plan out how that's going to work. I remember for me as a young student, I'd worked really hard on this list, and the night before the audition needed to be postmarked or the tape needed to be postmarked, I would go and record, and then I wouldn't leave that opportunity, that time to really test and make sure, like, which room should I play in? What does this sound like me on the tape? Does this sound like what I think I sound like? So I just want to stress how important it is. Because of our COVID precautions, we're inviting a lot less candidates than we typically do. So it's really important that you do everything you can to demonstrate your skills and your characteristic tone and your playing. And really make a great tape. Take the time. If you have a crack or a couple of cracks in a recording, go back and re-record that, right? There's going to be a lot of tapes. And again, we're not going to cancel out candidates because there's a crack, no. But just think of the fact that we may be listening to over 100 tapes, and what's really going to make you stand out positively, right? So that's really important. Some other things that we hear both from the audition tape and also in a live audition that's kind of can be a trend is just really focusing on the fundamentals. Make sure that you are playing the trumpet really well on there. Also, something that people I don't think spend enough time on is working on those bugle calls like taps, and I believe To the Color, if I'm not mistaken, is on our list. But really being able to play those as more than just exercises or open valve tongued lip slurs. Like there's, especially if you go, I don't know, Kevin, if your band has anything like this, but if you go to the Marine Band website, I believe every trumpet player there's a recording of their taps, and you could hear how differently and musically each person does it. Now, I will note that the rhythm that the Marines play is different from the rhythm that we play on taps in the Air Force. So make sure you're honoring those straight eighth notes versus the dotted eighth, 16th, and you'll see our music is notated the way we would like to hear it. So, but what I'm getting at is really take some time and make sure that you're making really beautiful music within the confines of what taps should be, a bugle call. I think that that's worth kind of exploring, and something that maybe I waited too long in my development to explore.
Well, I think one thing that I would suggest that people do if they're thinking about taking an audition for a military band is listen to the players that are in those bands. So like if you're trying out for the Marine Band, listen to how Marine Band plays taps. And then when you play it, you can play it in a way that they're going to feel comfortable with, because you've done that homework beforehand.
The age of information, it's you have access to a lot. So the Air Force Band has a YouTube channel, and they have live performances. They have there's a bugle call. So there's To the Color on there. Someone performing it from the ceremonial brass. That sounds fantastic. Or you can go to, militarytrumpetjobs.com and you can actually hear Adrian Holton playing one of the excerpts from the list. Go check it out. We're going to be releasing it next week.
Yeah, that's great. You reminded me that I believe it's for Memorial Day. The past 2 years, we've had a different trumpet player that we've featured playing taps. So I believe this past Memorial Day, it was Technical Sergeant Jason Covey, wonderful taps. I think the year before that was Technical Sergeant Mike Brest, who's our section leader right now. And you can hear, and they play taps very differently. They both play so beautifully, though, and so I think I think it's kind of enlightening to hear the different possibilities of how you can play that and still be appropriate and honor the bugle call the way it should be. So yeah, you're right. There's a ton of resources. I think there's one final thing that I would encourage our candidates to consider is the marching portion. We have a portion of our audition where you have to memorize a march or just a segment of a march. And then you have to actually, in the final round, demonstrate that you can march and play that from memory. So the first thing is follow the instructions and definitely memorize it. Because I can't tell you how many times when I was auditioning for this group, I'd see people in the practice room wasting chops memorizing it because they didn't realize they had to memorize it. So
God.
Memorize it. And then also practice marching it. Like, you don't need to go outside. You can march around in your basement or your living room or your kitchen. I know a lot of people, maybe we're in a competitive high school marching band, march drum corps, but maybe it's been a few years since you did it. And I know for me, it's one of those things I kind of forget how to make if I don't do it for a while, I forget how to march and still make a good sound. That's really important. And I'm not saying that you have to come from a marching background. That's not the case. If you win the job, you'll spend 8 lovely weeks down at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, and you'll spend 8 weeks learning how to march. And so when you show up, you'll be definitely better at it than you were when you auditioned. But it's still something that it's a minimum requirement that you have to meet. You have to be able to march and play with a good sound.
All expenses paid summer camp, just with drill sergeants.
Yeah. All meals provided.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us and our viewers. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, and thank you for what you're doing. I think there's a lot of stigma about military bands, and there's a lot of not great information out there, and it's awesome that you're kind of exposing, what the job really is and the wonderful benefits and the rewarding musical aspects that we have. So thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us on MTJ.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
There we go.
I gotta update my Zoom. Now I feel left out. Mike Wazowski.
Always watching.
All right. So as we said earlier, Ryan and I are the creators of MilitaryTrumpetJobs.com, and we are always thinking of ways to provide all of you with the quality content about military trumpet jobs, from recording excerpts to the play-along backtracks and talking to the top professionals in our field.
And please follow or subscribe to our content on Facebook at Military Trumpet Jobs, Instagram at Military Trumpet Jobs, Twitter at Mil Trumpet Jobs, and our YouTube channel, Military Trumpet Jobs. So you can always be up to date anytime a new audition list comes out. We hope that these videos help all of you with your audition journeys. Kevin and I have done a lot of auditions, and it's tough, and we want you to be prepared.
Don't make the same mistakes that we made. If you have any questions for us or want us to create specific content, please reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We love all the questions we get through email or Facebook Messenger or Instagram. We want to be able to get answers to you. So we really appreciate you reaching out. Thanks so much for listening. Happy practicing, folks. Woo! Okay, so I'm sorry. Damn it. Hold on. Do you need a green card or need to be a Visa holder? I'm sorry.
I'm a Visa holder, Kevin. I have several Visa cards.
Yeah, I have an American Express that I just got platinum.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sapphire, Reserve,
Gold, Star, Emerald, Plus.
Gonna show off the bat chair.
Yeah. Bat chair, dude.
Bat chair.